My name is Adrian. I'm 22, and last week I graduated college. I wasn't expecting a grand parade or a rented hall with gold balloons spelling my name. I knew better than to dream big in my family, but I did think maybe there'd be something. A dinner, a cake, a card. I'd watched other friends post pictures with their families, all proud smiles and coordinated outfits. Me? I came home to a half-thawed frozen pizza on the counter and a text in the family group chat that said, "Congrats, Adrian," sandwiched between a meme from my uncle and my cousin's dog pics. No one was home. I stared at that pizza for longer than I care to admit. It was still in the plastic. No note, no instructions, not even in the oven. Just dumped like leftovers from a party no one bothered inviting me to. And the worst part? The smell. The faint scent of charcoal and fireworks still lingered in the cushions. My brother's graduation party had been last weekend. I remember hearing the thumps of bass through my bedroom wall, even though I wasn't invited to that either. I'd been told it was his moment. He's 19, barely scraped through community college, but they went all out. Backyard lights, buffet catering, and I swear to God, a drone hovering around like it was filming the trailer for a Netflix special. I'd watched it from my window, his friends piling in, Mom fussing over cupcakes shaped like tiny diplomas, Dad flipping burgers like it was the 4th of July. I never said anything. I just kept packing up my dorm stuff. Quietly. I didn't want to make it about me. That's what they always said I did. Growing up, anytime I asked for anything, attention, space, help, I was told I was starting drama or being difficult. Even as a kid, I was the one who could entertain himself. My brother, Lucas, always needed the room to revolve around him, and it always did. He had sports trophies, handmade birthday banners, surprise just because gifts. I had space, the kind that echoes. So yeah, when I walked through the door that day and saw that pizza, the kind I used to eat in high school when they forgot to make dinner, I just stared. And when my mom finally came home an hour later, talking on the phone and laughing like it was any other Wednesday, I asked her, "So, no one wanted to do anything for my graduation?" She didn't even look at me at first, just shrugged, tossed her bag on the couch, and said, "You're not really the celebrating type, are you?" Like it was a compliment. Like she was letting me off easy. I didn't reply. I didn't even blink. I just turned, walked to my room, and zipped up the bag I hadn't unpacked yet from moving out of my dorm. I had already taken everything important with me anyway. My laptop, my degree, and the envelope of cash I'd saved from tutoring and part-time shifts. It wasn't a lot, but it was enough to get me somewhere else. I walked past her without a word. Past the pizza, still on the counter. Past the congrats text, still pinned at the top of the group chat no one had followed up on. I didn't slam the door. I didn't make a speech. I just left. Sometimes the loudest moments are the quiet ones. That night, I checked into a small hotel about 30 minutes away. Nothing fancy. Just 4 walls and silence. It was the first time in years I didn't have to brace myself before walking into a room. No tension. No eyes rolling when I opened my mouth, no passive-aggressive digs masked as jokes. Just a bed, a lamp, and me. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. One notification. A text from my Aunt Carla. Why's everyone freaking out? No greeting. No emojis. Just that. I stared at it, wondering what they were saying. Wondering if Mom was telling everyone I'd run off again, the way she used to say it when I took long walks to clear my head and came back to accusations of being dramatic. I thought about replying. Just something short. Maybe. Asked the pizza. But I didn't. I put the phone down and looked at the ceiling, the weight of it all pressing on my chest like a stack of unfinished conversations. I hadn't cried. Not yet. But I felt the water rising, just under the surface, waiting for the right crack to spill through. The next morning, there were more messages. Some from my cousin. One from Lucas, just a question mark. Then Dad, what's this about leaving? Call your mother. The only one that stuck out came a few minutes later from Mom herself. It said, "We didn't mean to make you feel that way." Not, "We're sorry." Not, "We were wrong." Just that vague, safe phrase. The kind that puts the blame on how I felt instead of what they did. I didn't respond. Instead, I pulled out my laptop and opened a blank document. At the top, I typed a list, just a title, everything they don't know I paid for. I started writing. Tuition. Groceries. Lucas's broken laptop I replaced without telling him. Dad's overdue credit card that mysteriously got cleared. The electric bill when Mom forgot it in January. All the times I kept the lights on, literally and metaphorically, and asked for nothing in return. They didn't know. Because I never made it about me. Because I thought they'd notice eventually. Because I thought family worked like math. You give, you get. But in our house, the equation never balanced. And I was tired of it. The next entry in that list wasn't a payment. It was a plan, one they'd never see coming. The first time I ever considered pulling away financially, it felt like betrayal, like I was being petty or vengeful. But sitting in that tiny hotel room, replaying that shrug and those 7 words, "You're not really the celebrating type," something inside me finally clicked into place. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't about getting even. It was about finally letting go of people who never held me. I spent the next day in the hotel lobby, headphones in, noise canceling the world as I went line by line through my online banking. It was almost funny how many recurring charges were tied to them. Netflix, my brother's email. Spotify, my mom's. The phone plan, of course, was still under my name. Group family package that I'd taken over in college because you're better with tech stuff. Water bill, electricity, the cloud storage everyone used to dump their endless photo backups. Mine. I'd never thought twice about it. I just paid. Quietly. Like I always did. That evening, I set a reminder. 3 days from now. Cancel everything. Not out of spite, but because it was time. 2 days passed with silence from me. But my phone, it didn't stop. My mom sent longer and longer messages, each one trying to sound more composed but bleeding through with desperation. At one point, she called me by a nickname she hadn't used since I was a kid. That stung. Not because I missed it, but because I knew she only dusted off affection when she wanted something. Like her love was stored in a cabinet marked emergencies only. Lucas tried calling too. Just once. Left a voicemail. It started with, "Yo, man, not sure what's going on," then paused, and ended with a lazy, "But mom's trippin'. Can you fix it?" Fix it. Like I was the janitor of their dysfunction. That night, I sent one email. Just one. To my boss at the tutoring center where I'd worked part-time throughout college. She'd once offered me a full-time role if I ever stuck around. I asked if the offer still stood. Her reply came in an hour. "Still yours if you want it. We're opening a new satellite branch. You'd have your own office." I stared at the screen for a long time. My own office. No fireworks. No drone footage. But it felt more real than anything my family had ever handed me. The next morning, I canceled the family phone plan. I got a message almost instantly. "Your device has been disconnected." Then a second. "Unable to authorize payment. Insufficient funds." That one was from the electric company. By noon, I had emails from 3 different customer support agents asking if I was sure I wanted to cancel these shared services. I clicked yes on every one of them. Then, I shut off my phone. Not forever. Just for a day. That evening, I rented a car and drove 2 hours north to check out the new tutoring branch. Small town, decent population, quiet streets. A single coffee shop on the corner with a handwritten chalkboard menu and a barista who actually made eye contact when she spoke. I ordered a latte and sat by the window, watching the sunset through a row of sleepy trees. The whole time, I wondered if they were still trying to call. But I also didn't care. Back at the hotel, my email inbox had exploded. Since the phone plan was down, they'd found my work email, my backup Gmail, even my LinkedIn. There was a message from my dad, short, cold, calculated. "You're being immature. Family has ups and downs. You don't walk away from it." I read that twice. Ups and downs. Funny how they only noticed the downs when I stopped lifting them. At around 10 p.m., I opened the group chat. For the first time in days, I tapped it open just to see what they were saying now. Lucas had sent an all-caps message. "Dude, why is my phone dead? I need it for work." Followed by a string of angry emojis. My mom had replied, "I don't know what's going on with Adrian. He's obviously going through something." Like I was the problem. Like I hadn't been holding everything together for years. Then came the clincher. My aunt, the one who had texted me that first night, wrote, "So, what exactly did we do?" That was it. No apology. No recognition. Just a puzzled shrug in text form. I stared at it for a long while, fingers hovering over the keyboard, debating whether it was even worth answering, whether explaining myself would make a dent. And then I thought of something my freshman writing professor once said when I struggled with cutting scenes from a story. You don't need to explain everything. Sometimes, silence is the period at the end of a sentence. So I didn't reply, but I did open a new file. A document I labeled, Exit Plan, Final. Not because I was running, because I was done staying put. 3 days after I walked out, the silence finally cracked, not on my end, but theirs. It started with an email from the family landlord. Yes, landlord, because despite the show they put on, the house we grew up in wasn't ours. My parents had been renting for years under a long-term agreement with a relative who lived out of state. I had quietly been making up the difference every month. Mom and Dad thought their rent was magically low. No, it was subsidized by me, ever since I found a copy of the overdue notice in our junk drawer 2 years ago. That email now said, "Payment not received. Contract at risk of default. Please respond immediately." That was the first domino. And when it tipped, everything else followed. Lucas, for all his attitude and ego, still used my Spotify Premium. Suddenly, he couldn't play his gym playlists. My dad's credit card, which had been magically improving since I began paying it off bit by bit, got declined. And Mom ran into the biggest wall. She called her stylist and got told her appointment was canceled due to non-payment of the subscription plan they'd signed her up for through my account. The messages that followed turned from confusion to rage. "Adrian, what is going on? Why are you doing this? Call me. Now. You think this is funny? You're being cruel." I wasn't laughing. In fact, I was sitting in a small rental apartment, sipping tea on a couch I just bought secondhand, staring at those texts as if they belonged to a version of my life that I'd already walked away from. The tutoring center had offered to help cover moving costs. They even let me pick my own hours. I had real coworkers now. A keycard with my name on it. A plaque on the door that read, "A. Bennett, academic consultant." No one here shrugged when I spoke. No one forgot I existed. And yet, I could still feel their grip tugging. That guilt, that invisible leash that years of being the responsible one had knotted around my throat. It wasn't enough to leave. They needed me to feel bad for leaving. That's what the next wave of messages was about. My mom switched tones like she was flipping through radio stations. "I know you're upset, but this is hurting everyone." I didn't mean what I said. I was just stressed. "You always take things so personally. You're punishing us for being imperfect. Then finally, you'll regret this when we're gone." There it was. The emotional grenade. She didn't know how to say sorry, so she reached for fear instead. But I didn't bite. Instead, I replied to Aunt Carla, the only one who'd asked why, even if she didn't really want the answer. I kept it short. I graduated. I came home to a frozen pizza. I watched you all throw Lucas a full-blown party while pretending I didn't exist. And now, the only time anyone remembers me is when they lose something I used to quietly provide. I didn't disappear. I just stopped volunteering for invisibility. She never replied. A week passed. And then, the doorbell rang. It was a Saturday. I was halfway through reading a book I'd been meaning to start since sophomore year. I opened the door, and there she was, Mom. Her hair a mess. No makeup. That face, the one she wore when the teacher called home or the check bounced. That face that meant damage control. She didn't say anything at first. Just looked at me like she didn't know where to begin. I didn't offer help. Finally, she said, "We just wanted to celebrate you the way you'd want." I tilted my head. With silence? And a freezer meal? Her eyes watered. And for a second, I thought maybe this would be the moment she got it. That she'd say sorry. That she'd finally, truly see me. Instead, she said, "You've always been so sensitive." That was it. Not an apology. Just another deflection, dressed in faux concern. I stepped back and started to close the door. She put her hand on the frame. "Wait, please. At least talk to your brother. He's been a wreck. His job depends on his phone." I gave a dry laugh. "You mean the one I paid for?" Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. That was when I decided I was done playing the role of the family's silent ATM. I stepped fully outside. Calm. Clear. You don't get to neglect me, minimize me, and then panic when the support you took for granted vanishes. I was never celebrated, not once, not even when I paid for things you didn't know were mine to give. I walked out because the only thing colder than that pizza on the counter was the way this family pretended I mattered. She blinked. Her face paled. And I knew in that moment that this conversation wasn't going to fix anything, because she still didn't get it. So I gave her one final look. I'm not the one who disappeared. I just stopped showing up where I wasn't welcome. Then I closed the door. And behind it, for the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. It took exactly 3 days for the fallout to turn into full-blown chaos. After Mom showed up at my apartment and left empty-handed, I heard nothing. Not a text, not an email, not even a passive-aggressive Facebook post. Just silence. But silence, I learned, is rarely peaceful in families like mine. It's a pause, a lull in the storm before the next wave hits. And it did. I got a call from my former landlord at the tutoring center. He sounded amused. "Hey, Adrian. Not trying to pry, but there's someone calling around saying they're trying to track you down." A woman. Emotional. Left a message saying it was urgent, but didn't say what it was about. "Thought you should know." I thanked him, already knowing who it was. That same day, I opened my laptop and checked the shared family Google Drive. It was still linked to my email, one of the last things I hadn't touched. Inside, buried in a folder named Home Stuff, I found copies of unpaid utility bills, rent notices, and something new, a scanned letter from a collection agency. My name wasn't on it, but I'd seen enough of these before to know where it was headed. I logged out. Later that night, Lucas tried to call me using someone else's number. When I answered, there was a pause. "Dude," he said, "you really cut everyone off, huh?" I didn't reply. "They're freaking out. Mom's crying every day. Dad's barely talking to anyone. Aunt Carla's been trying to talk sense into them, but look, can you just come home and talk to them?" There was a time I might have folded. I might have heard the word crying and mistaken it for remorse. But I'd sat with this too long. I knew better now. "You mean the same mom who couldn't even heat up a pizza on the day I graduated?" "She didn't mean it like that." "No, Lucas," I said, calm and clear, "she meant it exactly like that. Just like she meant it when she told me I was too sensitive, when Dad said I should just be grateful I'm not homeless, or when they spent $1,000 celebrating you and left me a microwave box and a frozen dinner. They meant all of it." "You're being harsh." "No," I replied, "I'm being honest." He sighed, like I was the one exhausting him. "You think you're the only one who's had it hard," he snapped. "You think you're the only one who's done anything for this family?" "No," I said, "but I'm the only one who did it quietly, who paid the bills no one wanted to talk about, who showed up, over and over, and got treated like a backup plan." I paused, letting the silence stretch. "Why do you think I stayed quiet so long, Lucas? Because I didn't want to hurt anyone? No. It's because I knew the second I stopped giving, someone would call me selfish. And look, here we are." He didn't respond. I hung up. The next morning, I got a letter in the mail. A real one, handwritten. The envelope had my mom's loopy handwriting. Inside was a 2-page letter, half apology, half justification. She wrote about how hard things had been raising 2 boys, how they didn't mean to overlook me, how Lucas had always been more expressive, and I was independent. She kept using that word like it was an excuse. Independent, as if being low maintenance meant disposable. She said they were scared, that everything was falling apart without me, that I'd always been the one to keep things running smoothly. She ended the letter with, "We need you. Please come back so we can fix this." I folded the letter neatly and placed it in a drawer. Not to frame, not to save, just to remember. Because here's what they still didn't understand. You can't fix something that's been broken by design. My absence didn't break the family. It just exposed the cracks they'd been plastering over with denial. I moved forward. The new tutoring branch took off faster than anyone expected. I ended up managing a small team of junior tutors, all of whom reminded me of students I used to be bright, quiet, too used to being ignored. I gave them room to speak, encouraged them, celebrated small wins. One of them, a soft-spoken kid named Ezra, told me I was the first adult who ever remembered their name without asking twice. That stuck with me more than any family compliment ever had. I started building a life that didn't orbit around people who needed me to shrink in order to shine. I met neighbors, made friends, bought myself a bike. I found a new routine, one I didn't have to apologize for. Eventually, I blocked my family's numbers, not out of anger, but peace. I needed to stop letting them rent space in my mind without paying. Months passed. Then, on the morning of my 23rd birthday, I woke up to a knock at the door. It was a delivery driver. He handed me a small box, no return address. I opened it and found a folded card and a framed photo of Lucas and me from when we were kids. We were sitting on the curb in front of our old house, eating popsicles and grinning like idiots. The card simply said, "I didn't know what you were carrying. I do now. I'm sorry. L." I stared at that picture for a long time, not because it made me nostalgic, but because it reminded me how long I've been waiting to be seen. And maybe now, someone finally did. I didn't call back. I didn't send a reply. But I didn't throw it away, either. Some things don't need closure. They just need distance. I celebrated that birthday with 2 coworkers, a homemade cake, and a drink someone smuggled into the office after hours. We laughed. We talked about music and books and bad Tinder dates. No one asked me to prove my worth. No one made a passive-aggressive joke when I talked too much. No one compared me to anyone else. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a guest at my own table. I felt home. Not the one I came from, the one I built. And I didn't need fireworks. Just the quiet kind of peace that doesn't ask for anything in return.